and welcome to this week's Convex Conversation with me, broadcaster Helen Fospero. Plagued by adversity as a child, coping with epilepsy, bullying and a lifelong stammer, today's guest developed an extraordinary determination and will to succeed, which led him from his home in Cheshire to face unprecedented dangers on Mount Everest. Alex Staniforth survived the two most significant disasters in Everest's history in 2 consecutive years, aged just 18, and wrote his autobiography, Icefall, a year later, about the lessons he learned. Alex faces and has overcome mental health challenges and anxiety in his life, and co-founded Mind Over Mountains to help others with theirs. At the end of January, he made national news when the Princess of Wales joined him and some of his trained counsellors, experts and walkers for a rather bracing hike in the Peak District. Catherine enthusiastically braved wet, blustery weather to get out in the hills and find out firsthand how the charity uses nature, the outdoors and expert coaches to help people with their mental health. And I'm delighted to say that Alex is indoors at the moment and joins me now. Hello, Alex.
Good morning. Yeah, great to be here and great to be dry for a change.
But it is a change actually living in the Lake District being dry. But we met at a rail conference I was hosting. You were speaking at it. So imagine my surprise when a few months later you popped up on my Instagram feed, leading the Princess of Wales through the rain on a hike in the Peak District.
I don't open every podcast with that opening. It certainly feels kind of serendipitous, but yeah, it was a phenomenal moment, I think, for the charity and my journey so far. So it's not every day that happens in the Peak District.
No, well, I'm looking forward to hearing more about it. But tell me, first of all, a bit about Mind Over Mountains and the personal journey which inspired you to start it.
Yeah, Mind Over Mountains is a mental health charity. We work all over England and Wales. We've been a charity now for over 5 years. We basically combine walking in nature with coaching, counselling and mindfulness, and essentially give people that safe space to walk and talk with professional mental health support, coaches, counsellors. And really, it's not about challenging people necessarily, racing them up a hill. It's about taking time to slow down, to reconnect with ourselves and each other. And the people we work with are really diverse, from young adults to carers to emergency frontline workers. And the thing that brings them together is that need for connection, that need for some time out, and people with or without diagnosed mental health illness like depression or anxiety. And where did it all begin? I think very much from personal experiences, as a lot of charities often are, in response to an event or to personal adversity. And I think I've always suffered with anxiety since I've been a child. That has led to depression and eating disorders as a teenager. And now as an adult, it's something that I still manage and have to manage on a day-to-day basis. Luckily, I'm in a great place, but the outdoors and exercise and movement have been absolutely fundamental to that and have been the best therapy, the cheapest therapy that I've ever tried. And the charity really was born out of that idea and how it took me longer to get the support I needed as a young man than it did to cycle, walk and run over 5,000 miles around the UK. So there was this need for extra support, and Mind Over Mountains exists to try and change that, to fill that need, to offer people an alternative, because I think that this could help a lot of people as an early intervention.
I think you've described in previous interviews the outdoors as your medicine, as your tonic, as a saviour. How has the outdoors really helped you get through your mental health problems and made you then want to share that with other people?
Realistically, it's not some magical pill, and I'm not promising anyone anything. It's not going to work for everyone, but I think it's fundamentally where we're supposed to be. I think it's something we've lost touch with. We're not designed to live surrounded by concrete. We're supposed to be out in the green, and there's so much research and science supporting that already. And how it helped me, I think, from an early age, it gave me that safe space. It gave me that freedom, that sense of achievement, that escape, that sense of perspective on life and our problems. And as a 14-year-old on my very first hill walk in the Lake District, I still remember that feeling of awe, and it blew my mind. It made me realize that I could overcome things and I could achieve things. And having had epilepsy as a child, having had a stammer all my life, being badly bullied because of all this, and all these things really fed into that anxiety. The outdoors was that place where I finally felt I belonged, where I could challenge myself. And whenever I've had any major life events since then, I find being outside just allows me to see things from a different perspective, to find hope. And on a day-to-day basis, as you mentioned, it's like my medicine. And I often joke it's my natural health service. And like any medication, if you stop taking it, you notice the side effects. And if I've not been outside or not been on a run or not been for a bike ride, I notice that.
When people come and walk with you, I think what sounds really nice is there's the option, isn't there? You can either come for a walk with you, and if you don't feel like opening up that day, there's no pressure. But I think perhaps what your USP is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, is that you can come for a walk, and if you feel you want to unload a bit or chat to somebody, there are people in that group who, without a white coat on, are professionally trained to understand, to listen, and then hopefully give some advice.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. There was something about being outside in nature when you're walking or moving side by side without that eye contact, like you might get in a clinical environment or in a boardroom or on a phone call, or where it's easier to really open up, to share what's really going on for you, especially for the men who often don't like to share their mental health challenges or their feelings. And when I think back to the event in Manchester, like the kind of construction and manufacturing and engineering industries are really known for that, and the rates of mental health challenges and stress in men in particular. And there is definitely no expectation or judgment or pressure. And our coaches will always set the scene and contract at the start of the walk that we're not there to fix anyone. There's no pressure to share. But if you want to walk alongside someone, we've got trained, qualified staff who are there to do that. And I think having them there is what makes us different, because we've got the professional support there to support people wherever they are. And even if we have to signpost them or help them find extra support, it's really important, I think, if you're going to bring stuff like that out of people, which maybe they haven't shared for 10, 20 years, you've then got the correct support in place for them. And what's shared on the hill stays on the hill. And it's very much creating that space. And people often are very hesitant, resistant to that. They come down just completely blown away by it.
That leads me nicely on to asking you what kind of things people say, because we know that men notoriously not as good at being as open about their feelings as women. And also there are really horrific rates of male suicides in Britain. There's a real problem there. In particular, what kind of things do males say when they come down that hill and they've been out on a good hike with you?
It really varies. And as a trustee and as a founder, like, I've not been on the events for a while because we have a fantastic team. I'm not needed. I make my biggest impact by fundraising and speaking and various other things. But I've seen people who come to the start of those events, like, just anxious, very shaky, very wobbly. And they just come down and you see that weight off their shoulders. And men in particular who maybe are used to pushing themselves, they're used to challenging themselves, saying, actually, it's really nice just to be able to slow down and not have to prove anything. And there's a lot of things that I share where people have literally maybe suffered with bereavements or grief or suicidal thoughts and really challenging situations. And I remember one particular event, it was a retreat in the Peak District, where there was a young man on that event who literally came down, and he said it was the best weekend of his life because it made him realize he's got a lot to live for. And actually, this person in particular has been very open about that story because it then inspired him to go and do a marathon to raise money for us. And he actually joined us in the Peak District. I met a Princess of Wales, so he got to share his story actually to her. We had another man who was in a retreat in Dartmoor who had literally always kind of thought mindfulness and all that was a bit kind of woo-woo and never really been into it. And although I wasn't on that particular retreat, I know that it benefited him so much that he became a volunteer for us and has been on 3 events now to give back. The amount of people that come on an event and then go and do stuff for us, for me, kind of says it all. And one of them currently is just climbed back on Kagura in South America as a fundraiser for us. Another one climbed Penny Fan 52 times for us last year.
52 times?
Yeah, once a week, and took people on the journey. And I think I obviously don't want to share anything that's been shared to us in confidence, but the testimonials on our website really speak for themselves.
I've climbed Penifan once and I was quite proud of that. And much as I feel like I could be a big supporter of your charity, I couldn't imagine doing it 52 times. That's absolutely extraordinary. Tell us a bit about how you ended up with the Princess of Wales joining you, because I'm sure your charity is very much aligned with how she feels about mental health and nature and the outdoors and how it's helped her on her recent journey with her sickness.
Yeah, I mean, the Princess of Wales is a massively good fit with what we do. And I think that was why we wanted her to come and experience it, to get her support, really. How it came about, I can't really take any credit for it. Our marketing team had been working on this for a while for a contact. And the Princess of Wales is obviously very busy, very active, and the stars aligned. We had a plan. There was a lot that went into it with prior planning, routes, recce's, visits. The team had to come up from London a couple of times just to check it all out. And we got the go-ahead about 2 weeks before. So everything was lined up and it was all hands on deck, really. We got given the dates because the Princess was visiting lots of different projects in the area, in the Peak District. And honestly, it kind of didn't go to plan, but it went perfectly at the same time, if that makes sense, because the Princess kind of just turned up and took the lead, really. And like these things, you have to just go with the flow. And I'm sure in your work, you've had to respond to all sorts of timings and schedules, and you just have to be flexible. And on the day, we had to cut the route short because the Princess had to catch a helicopter back from Chatsworth House, and phenomenal, right? Different life. But I think the Princess is a massive advocate for well-being and walking. And even on the walk herself, she shared about the healing powers of it and how it helped her through her illness, how much she wants her kids to be able to do these things. And she said herself that we need more of this. We need more stuff like this. And when the team asked us all to share 3 words that were taken away from the day, the Princess shared mind, body, spirit, and how in this busy schedule where she was obviously rushing around the country, just giving her 45 minutes just to slow down and splash in puddles. And you could tell how much she enjoyed it and how much she valued it. And it was surreal. It's given us press coverage in Canada, Brazil, the US, Spain. It's been bonkers, literally, because the team have been overwhelmed with things like this and bookings and more fundraisers and support. And all this does is help us to raise awareness of what we do, to reach more people and get more support. But we do hope that it will open a door for the Princess to support us long term. And I could tell, given all the stuff she does and sees, that it had really kind of resonated with her.
Can you describe what it was like when you arrived? Because the bit of footage I remember from the news, it's a kind of cheering everybody up and saying, come on, let's go. I mean, she really did take the lead, didn't she?
Yeah, we had a plan, and I had to rehearse a speech because as the founder, talking a little bit, capturing the essence of what we do as a charity. Now, as you heard last year, I often give keynotes for 45 minutes. So I had to condense this into 2 minutes, and having a stammer as well, I have to make sure it's really well rehearsed. I ended up not doing that at all, but I was quite happy because when she arrived, there was all these Range Rovers suddenly piling into a car park. Everyone's kind of scuttling around into the positions. And then it was all a bit of a blur, really. But straight away, she made everyone feel at ease. Everyone just had that warmth. She made a time to speak to everyone. She spoke to our CEO, Ian, first, then myself, and then she kind of worked her way through a number of our team and the participants who came along to share their stories. And they were the stars of the show. I wanted to make sure that they had time to talk about it because they're the best evidence. I can talk about it all day, but frankly, it's the participants who matter. And the humour, the just comfort, despite obviously her role, probably the most elegant walker we've ever had, I must say. And a lot of the news sadly focus on that rather than the fact that she was outside. But it all just kind of flowed from there, really. And then we didn't have a lot of time. So the Princess was keen to get us out onto the hillside, really.
And was it a really beautiful walk? I know the weather was a bit blustery and windy and rainy, but it looked really good fun out there. Tell me a bit about the walk itself and where she led you all.
Well, we planned the route onto Kerber Edge, so near Baslow, and it was short because it was really just to give her an experience of what we do with the team. And despite that, we managed to fit bits of coaching and mindfulness in there as well. It was a freezing cold day, and I was literally running laps around the car park just to stay warm with all my layers on because I was trying to get our hoodie and branding in the shot as well because it was obviously that's always the agenda from a marketing point of view. So we were freezing, but when we were on the hill, we were blessed. It took a 360 and there was even patches of blue sky and sunshine breaking through. So the rain did stop pretty much until she left, but then it came back again. Yeah, the weather wasn't brilliant, but what I sensed from the Princess was that she just embraced it. She loved being outside, and you kind of think she's used to being in very polished environments, but she's just walking straight through puddles and embracing it. It was fantastic. And just trying to make sure that everyone had time to speak to her. And when we got back into the car park, when she said her thank yous and farewells, it was quite funny because a fell runner came blasting into the car park, ran straight past her and probably had absolutely no idea that he just ran past the Princess of Wales. So I think for me personally as the founder, it's probably the best moment, the highlight since we started it many years ago, because to get that recognition just means the world to us.
And also, I would imagine she's a very good listener.
Yeah, you could tell that. And everyone was obviously nervous, but she took a genuine interest. Despite obviously how many people she must meet, she was asking some great questions to me and the team around who comes along, where did it start, why did I want to start it, who was involved, and that partnerships, how do we grow this sort of thing. And then obviously I didn't hear every conversation she had with the team, but it was just really resonating with her and her kids and how she loved seeing them being outside, basically.
And very nice as well that she shared with you how nature and the outdoors has helped her, because she's made no secret of that and she's talked about that quite openly, hasn't she?
Yeah, and I know with her illness as well, and I imagine just the stresses of her lifestyle, that nature is something that is often difficult to find time for, but she did mention about the healing power of it and the mind, body, spirit, how she does see it working as a triangle and how they all need to be balanced. And you may have seen as well that she released a series of videos last year talking about the different seasons, and there's really beautiful words about that and being outside and how it's just helped her to find, I guess, perspective. When I reflect on the pandemic, during that time being based in the Lake District, getting outside on a hillside was the most calming thing, because the whole world was chaos around us, but nature was business as usual. And a lot was said on the day, and a lot of it is a blur now, as you'd imagine, because you can't really take it all in. But very much, she just wanted to get as much of a walk as possible. And although we had to do like an out and back, it was just phenomenal, really.
Well, I really hope that maybe she'll take a more official role with the charity, because it seems such a beautiful fit. And you can imagine my surprise, because I'd listened to you give your Everest speech about how helping everybody through their Everest as an event. And I was thinking, it'd be great at some point. We'd kept in touch to get Alex on the podcast. And then I saw Mind Over Mountains. I saw the story and I thought, gosh, I must found the founder of this charity. This incredible story. Imagine my surprise, Alex, when I realized we'd had dinner together and we'd still been in contact after the event. So it's a joy to get you on. Tell us a bit about your childhood and what that was like, and really what the turning point was. Because I think you had a sort of fairly regular childhood when you were a little boy, and then things turned, didn't they? So tell us a bit about being little and what your life was like in those days.
Yeah. If you'd asked me back then whether I'd be going for a stroll with the Princess of Wales, I probably would never have believed you. I wouldn't have believed half of it, to be honest with you. If I go back to the very, very start, I was born in Cheshire, so not a lot of mountains in there. There was no adventurers in the family. My dad was a marathon runner, so he was the one who inspired me to start running, so maybe it's his fault. But I was an only child until we got the dog, and it was all very kind of normal and comfortable until I was 9 years old, and I had a seizure, which was diagnosed as a mild form of epilepsy. I've had a stammer all my life. I've never known life without that, which comes and goes when it likes. And because I was different and because kids are very kind and considerate, I was also bullied throughout school till the day I left. And all of this made the world feel like a very threatening place to be. School can be challenging. It was especially challenging for me, especially when I didn't really fit in. And I guess I was just this very anxious, shy, unconfident child. But I was loved and I had everything I needed, but it was still tough compared to what I knew at the time. So I guess the outdoors became my escape. That became a way to change that narrative. And essentially at 14, after that first hill walk, I was trying to find what was next. I didn't want to let all these things stop me from achieving my full potential. I kind of decided that they wouldn't. And at some point during that first hill walk when I was 14, I remember having this question: where is Mount Everest? Didn't know anything about it, didn't even know where it was, but being a millennial, came home, went on Google, came across a picture of Everest and found people, mere mortals like me, who'd climbed it. And then it just planted the seed of actually climbing Everest was the ultimate challenge, the ultimate goal, to prove myself, to prove all those bullies wrong. And that meant the world to me. Like at that point, that was all I wanted. Nothing else mattered. And at 14, you're naive, you make bad decisions, you think you can take on the world. Now, I never could have really imagined at that point that I'd actually be standing at base camp 4 years later on my first expedition. And in a nutshell, I basically did a lot in 4 years, started climbing in Mont Blanc and the Alps and Scotland and then the Himalayas, basically jumping through all the hoops and speaking to climbers and how I could follow in their footsteps. I had to raise all the money for the expedition purely through corporate sponsorship. Parents weren't just going to sign me a check. My dad, being from Yorkshire, said, a lot of money for a holiday, Al. And I was going to have to find a way or make one. Washing pots in the local pub wasn't really going to do it. So in principle, when I got to Everest in 2014, I was attempting to be the second youngest Brit at 18. I'm on an expedition led by Tim Mosedale, who summited Everest 7 times. And a day before we got to base camp, a massive avalanche in the icefall killed 16 people. So we had to pack up and go home without stepping a single foot on the mountain. Obviously, not complaining when we're going home safe to our families. But you quickly realise how much in life is outside of our control. Whether that's the weather, pandemic, avalanches, traffic, economy, all the stuff happening in the news around us right now. 2015, we were back on Everest for take 2. This time didn't go much better as we were just below Camp 1 in the ice wall when the earthquake hit Nepal and over 9,000 people died. So we were hit by a big powder avalanche. We were trapped on the mountain at Camp 1, 6,000 meters for 2 days, flown down by helicopter eventually, and came down to what I can only describe as a plane crash. And everything had gone because base camp had been hit by a much bigger avalanche triggered by the earthquake. And 3 of our team sadly weren't so lucky. So basically, we were in the right place. Had we not left base camp that morning, had we not crossed those ladders into the icefall, then we probably wouldn't be having this chat now. So yeah, I think the universe was trying to tell me something.
Yeah, it sounds like it was. And it's unbelievable to me in a way that you went back for the second attempt, because 16 people lost in the icefall on that day when you first arrived at Everest. I'm surprised that didn't put you off, Alex. Did you think long and hard about whether you would go back for that second attempt?
I think my mum didn't want me to go back a second time. To be honest, I didn't think much about it because with every challenge I've ever faced since I've been a teenager, like my response is always, what's the opportunity? How do I grow from this? How do I learn from this? When we experience things that don't go to plan, and so much in life, the objective, like Everest, was outside of our control, but actually we can still respond to that. And I think what matters is the response in the situation. And actually, you can never really be fully ready for something like that. You never feel like you've trained enough. So in hindsight, actually, it was an opportunity to go home, to train harder, to come back stronger, to give ourselves the best possible chance. So I knew that if I didn't get back on the wagon soon, then I was going to miss that opportunity. And what happened was obviously tragic. It was horrific. It was the biggest disaster in Everest history at the time. But actually, you accept these risks in the first place. And the chance of that happening again was probably fairly small. For me, the biggest risk in life is taking no risk at all, because we never discover what's possible. And I've met people my age or similar that have horrible things happen to them. We're all on borrowed time, and that's what I learned from the whole experience. So I think it was quickly, okay, deal with the self-pity. That isn't useful. How do I grow from this? What's the plan? And I think straight away I knew I was going back because I had unfinished business. And on the way out of base camp, on the way back from that first expedition, I dropped all my university offers because I knew I had unfinished business, and I never looked back.
Can you describe on the second attempt, because I'm quite fascinated by that icefall area, what it was like, what the surroundings was like, and then what happened when the earthquake struck and how you guys felt? I'm imagining it was really scary and that you might have thought your number was up. But can you give somebody who hasn't been to Everest a sense of the surroundings and what actually happened?
It's absolutely mind-blowing. Like the Himalayas is like being on a different planet. And you'll have all the people saying it's full of trash, it's full of litter, and I haven't been for a long time, so it may have changed, but it is mostly pristine and beautiful. And when you're going through the icefall, it's quite terrifying. You know, you've got house-sized blocks of ice. You're walking on step ladders held together by string. There's crevasses hundreds of feet deep. You can see this big black abyss below you. And that's why we leave in the early hours of the morning, whilst the ice is more frozen, it's more stable, so it's safer. But even at base camp, you're in this like amphitheatre of 7,000 metre peaks, and you just can't get your head around it, really. It's just, you have to go to experience it firsthand. And the people, the culture is just beautiful as well. But the icefall is very intimidating. But at the same time, you've got this beautiful colours of ice and shapes, and you feel like you're kind of hidden away from the world as you're kind of tunneling your way through it to Camp 1, which is the first of 4 camps below the summit on the south side in Nepal. And what happened that day was obviously completely out of the blue, but it was quite a moody, stormy day, and we very nearly didn't leave. The normal visibility you have, you've got like 7,000 metre mountains either side of you, and seracs and cliffs, and just too much to take in with the eye. Lots at the end of the valley. But you couldn't see any of that because the fog had really come in and the clag, and it was really grey and horrible. And I was on my own at this point because we were about half an hour away from Camp 1. Most of my team are raised ahead of me. 2 guys, maybe 10, 15 minutes behind. So you're just kind of in your own world, pulling on the rope. You're absolutely knackered. Like that day, it felt like I'd never been on a mountain in my life. Just have to keep my head down and focus one step at a time. And the funny thing is, I didn't actually feel the earthquake. Only when I spoke to my teammates afterwards did I realize there'd been an earthquake. I just remember hearing this big kind of cracking sound, this booming noise of an avalanche coming down into the valley. But because of the fog, I couldn't see anything. So you can kind of see the base of the cliffs, and you see like the kind of where the valley had started to ease off as we come into the western combe. And I didn't really know what was happening. I just knew there was an avalanche and I needed to kind of get moving fast. So I move as fast as I can, which isn't easy at 6,000 meters. And then I started to assume that this avalanche had fallen behind us, maybe in the ice floor, and that I was safe. So I kind of dropped my guard, catch my breath. Phew, that was close. And then I just kind of felt this sudden shift of air pressure. And then I just got hit by this big whack of freezing cold, powder snow, deafening wind, you know, this white all around me. And for the first time in my life at 19, I'm thinking, yeah, this is it. No, it's all over. And there's nothing I can do but just stand and take it. And at that moment, it's the first time I've really felt pure fear. Like, genuinely, this is it. It's all sort of blur now. But we just got hit by powder, and the debris, the ice that happened the year before just didn't get us. So straight away, when this was subsided, I got on the radio, no response. I assume my teammates are gone. All I can do is get to Camp 1 and take stock and regroup. Now, luckily, we had made it to Camp 1, but the route back down was gone. The ropes were buried under fresh snow, and we were trapped there for 2 days with food for a day or 2 days at most, told we could be there for a week. So, yeah, that was an interesting phone call to make home, because Mum was like really excited that I rang her from Camp 1 on the satellite phone. And I was like, right, we've got a bit of a problem. But at this moment, we were like cut off from the whole world. We didn't know what had happened until our base camp manager, Henry, called us saying, it's all gone, chaos. We were like, how could it be gone? You can't possibly visualize that. And we just tried to make the best of it at Camp 1 for 2 days.
And so how did you get rescued then in the end?
It was by helicopter in the end, because that was really our only safe way back down. But with 170 people up there, this was the first kind of like big actual rotation of the season. It took a long time to get people up and down. But because the air is so thin up there, you know, the helicopters can only take 2 people at most. And it's literally a couple of minutes to get you down from Camp 1 to base camp, which is about 700 meters altitude difference. Probably the best helicopter flight I've ever paid for in my life. But I think then when we got back to base camp, we decided to stay around for a few days just to try and help and salvage anything we could, but also to kind of really ease the pressure on the airport and emergency services and the helicopters, which were trying to help people who were injured or were dead. So we were just in this chaos for 2 days, really. So we walked back down from there to the airport in Lukla, just really trying to take in, but probably in shock.
So much to take in. I'm sure you were in shock. But when you had chance to reflect on what had happened and reflect on all those experiences, what lessons do you think you took away from that, Alex? Because I would imagine it was a huge learning process.
Probably don't go to Everest when I'm there.
I'm not coming with you, just saying.
Yeah, I think for me personally, the lessons were just the fragility of life and how we're all on borrowed time. And when people say, oh, you've got plenty of time, do that when you're older, I'm like, how do we know? And it's given me a real narrative in terms of trying to fully realize my life purpose and to make something bigger than myself. And you realize actually goals, dreams can be replaced. Lives can't. But it's also given me a real drive to, I guess, create a legacy. Had I been in that tent at base camp, my tent, buried under a foot of ice and rock, it's like, what would I have left behind? And I'm kind of having a midlife crisis at 19 years old. A near-death experience at 19 or any age, it allows you to prioritize what's important. You don't complain when the bus is 5 minutes late. You realize that every day is a gift and you really appreciate it so much more. Now, that can have difficult things as well. And I think for a long time, I didn't get the help I needed. I kind of bottled that and it didn't really hit me until I was in the airport on the way home. And even now, talking like over 10 years on, that still has some negative implications on my whole mindset and self-worth. But ultimately, I'm grateful I've had that experience because you realize just how fragile life is.
You wrote an extraordinary book, Icefall. You've done everything much younger than most people would. I mean, really, Icefall is your story, and yet you were only, I think, 19 when you wrote it. And you say on the back cover, adversity may be the greatest teacher, but nothing can teach you more about life than death. And I guess that comes all directly from the things you experienced and now your appreciation of making the most of every day. But you are creating a legacy, Alex. And what really impresses me when you talk about Mind Over Mountains is that you're not necessarily day to day on those walks. That's what's great. That charity is growing with you at the helm. But that's really a legacy, isn't it? Because you're able to help so many more people rather than it be you leading a walk out in the hills.
Yeah, I don't think anyone would want to come on a walk led by me in case we get lost. But no, you're right. And I think my view of that, and also just being a leader in general, is that you have to empower people to carry out the work, because on our own, there's only so much impact we can make. And for me, success of an organization is to get it to a point where it is bigger than you, where, it can run by itself, because we only have so many hours in the day, and it's like, where can I make my biggest impact? And as a mental health charity, I need to avoid burning myself out by bringing in people that can do the things that I'm not very good at. I joke up for a while, I've been the chief interference officer because I don't know where I fit, but it is kind of my baby. And that day with the princess, and every day when we get stories of people that have benefited and supported and then gone and done something for us, it just fills me with that sense of purpose and joy. And I think that ultimately it has to become bigger than you, because it will last longer than us then. But ultimately, I just have to try and find the things where I can make my biggest impact.
You're making a huge impact. And what strikes me is that this incredible impact you're making, for example, last year you received an honorary doctorate from the University of Cheshire for your contribution to young people's mental health. I think a lot of this comes out of adversity. And I wonder what that little lad with the stammer and epilepsy, subject of bullying, would think to what you've gone on to achieve. It's extraordinary that you've taken the bull by the horns, Alex, and been determined to overcome all those personal things to then help many hundreds of people. Does it come from that adversity, do you think, and your childhood experiences, that drive and determination to do something like this and make a difference?
If I reframe this differently, people often ask me at talks in the questions, they say, what advice would you give to your younger self? And there's so much I could say there. And I think ultimately is that adversity is an opportunity. Depends how we treat it or look at it. We can be a victim, or we can see it as a challenge. And that mindset from an early age is ultimately what drives me now. And yes, when I turned 30 last year, something shifted, and it's strange, like how I've revisited and maybe changed a lot of those beliefs. But ultimately, there are so many people out there who I'm inspired by who've overcome massive things, and adversity forces you to adapt. It forces you to respond. And without all this, for sure, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation. And I'm not saying people should go and have an avalanche on Everest, or life will throw challenges at us that we don't ask for, we don't expect. But I do think that adversity is an opportunity. And ultimately, I've tried to build my life around that, sharing what I've learned so other people don't have to go through that in the first place.
The working title of my blind friend Amma Latif's book is Obstacles, I See None. How do you see obstacles?
Great example of that, and someone who's really kind of hit adversity head on. And I see obstacles as a challenge, as a game, and almost to the point now. Not that I'm not human, I don't have a whinge now and again, because I'm still human, but ultimately when something happens, I'm like, right, what's this trying to teach me? What's this about? Come on, bring it on. And I almost thrive in the chaos, because that's when we really discover what's possible, what we're capable of. And you take that resilience and that mindset and that confidence into everyday life. Now, I'm still a very anxious person, and my family and my partner will tell me that I worry too much about things that haven't even happened yet. And that's one advice I'd give to my younger self, is most of the things we worry about in life rarely even happen. It's the things that we don't expect that will take us by surprise. But we are capable of overcoming so much more than we even think.
You've done some incredible challenges, way too many to talk about in a 40-minute podcast. But you were the first and fastest person to climb all 446 mountains in England and Wales, completing the challenge in just 45 days. I'm just wondering, what does the rest of this year hold, Alex? Have you got more challenges that you want to take on and complete? Because I don't imagine you just sitting at home on that challenge front.
To be honest, I'm quite enjoying that at the moment. I mean, the 446 last year was the biggest thing I've ever done. It's kind of my new Everest. And I've realized now that I don't need Everest anymore. I found other challenges and other ways to get the same benefits, if that makes sense, without spending a fortune and traveling all the way around the world. I think my focus this year is my coaching. So I'm training as a coach and I'm working with lots of different people and leaders, trying to help them overcome their own adversity and achieve their own goals, which I'm really enjoying. I'm working on a third book, whenever I can find the time, which will share some of the stuff that we've spoke about today. But like working with books takes a lot of time and it can be a challenge as well. But big challenges, I think now I've had this shift where I'm not really going after big stuff anymore. I really just want to focus on helping people and almost evolving myself over the next 10 years. And my word for the year is evolution. So I'm trying to build a sustainable foundation for that. And at the same time, adventure running is who I am. And it's not necessarily sustainable to go off and do a 6-week challenge every year. So this year, I'm just going to be staying close to home and trying to beat my marathon time at Cheshire in October. So I've gone back from running really long distances to just doing stuff that I really enjoy doing and not doing stuff that I don't. And trying to get as fast as I can whilst I'm young enough and seeing what's possible, really. People maybe seem disappointed that I'm not planning something bigger, but I think you've got to be mindful not to keep chasing things all the time, just to enjoy the journey and enjoy the reflection time.
And to manage your anxiety and times when you do worry about things, I presume that the outdoors and the beautiful Lake District still offers you lots of peace and calm and that you get out there lots.
It's still a day-to-day thing for me, and I'm really blessed that I've been in Kendal now for over 6 years as my spiritual home. From a creativity, from a management, from a stress management perspective, I'm out every day, and I'll be out this afternoon on a run, and I'll be out probably for the rest of the week, whether that's running or cycling or jumping in cold water. And if people haven't tried that, I'd recommend they give it a go.
Next time I come up to Kendal to see my friend Gilly MacArthur, the cold water swimmer, I think we should go and have a swim in Windermere. I've only done it once and it took a lot of courage. It was cold. It was 11 degrees, which I think to her was like having a bath, but to me it was pretty cold.
That's cold.
So I think if you'll have me, I'll invite myself on a walk or a swim with you up in the Lake District at some point.
That sounds fantastic. And yeah, I'd love to, because there's always more adventures to share and update you on.
Absolutely. Well done for all your achievements, Alex, and showing us all that it is possible to get through tough times and come out the other side and grow. And you're helping so many other people in the process. So do keep going with what you're doing. And I hope at some point that on your Mind Over Mountains charity, we'll see a rather special patron or trustee or name on your paperwork.
Watch this space. But yeah, that might be a plan, but we'll see how things go.
Good luck with that. You've been listening to record-breaking adventurer and co-founder of Mind Over Mountains, Alex Staniforth, talking about the proudest moment of the charity's history so far, being joined on a hike by the Princess of Wales. If you battle with your mental health and are interested in learning more about what Alex and the team do, then you can follow them on Instagram or check out their website, mindovermountains.org.uk. Download and subscribe to our series at convex.podbean.com or search The Convex Conversation. We're on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen to yours. Next week, I'll be at the home of Roger McGough, known as the patron saint of poetry and the godfather of modern poetry. So join me then.